Howdily doodly do, citizens of the nerdy world, do not press that sprint button because welcome back to the fashionably late review. At long last, it's here. She's gonna talk about it. Halo Infinite at long last. I don't know why I'm saying that again. Whatever. We are always fashionably late because that's what we do at Words About Games. I am your glorious host, full of energy because I am off for the next 2 to 3.5 weeks. Whatever. David Mark Moody.
Whatever.
And joining me as always is my fabulous co-host, the one who has finished Halo Infinite because I've been too lazy to play it. The glorious, the impeccable, the amazing Amy Kate Alexander. How are you doing?
Impeccable. That was
Thought
a hell
I
of
better
an
spruce
intro.
you up a little bit because I said sprint button, so I thought I better bring it back by being extra ass-kissy today.
Remember in January when I said I can't talk about Halo without fucking getting hammered by sprint buttons? Funny joke. 17 months ago.
Yeah, it really, really was that Elf brought back.
Don't blame other people for the words that you choose to say.
Yeah, that's true. How
Has
are
a
you,
sprint
Amy?
button, and I'm okay.
Very good. Are you sure?
Has
Do
a
you
fucking
want to
sprint
talk?
button. Now we can
Do you
talk
want
about, the rest of the game.
Do you want to talk about the rest of the game?
I wouldn't mind. For once.
Okay. General information when all hope is lost and humanity's fate hangs in the balance. The Master Chief, the Lock himself, is ready to confront the most ruthless foe he's ever faced. Step inside the armor of humanity's greatest hero to experience an epic adventure and explore the massive scale of the Halo ring. Amy, you have completed Halo Infinite. What are your general thoughts before we dive deep into the Halo ring?
My general thoughts are that Halo Infinite is a very good game, and I'm gonna fucking kill you. But
Come again?
I said I'm gonna fucking kill you. That's my general thoughts. Halo Infinite is a very, very, very good game. When we did our predictions for 2021 back in January, and we just listed off a bunch, and I said Halo Infinite's gonna get great reviews, and people are gonna be like, Halo's back, even though it never really went anywhere. Halo's back, even though it never really went anywhere. I sent a text message to my friend. He was like, "Oh, how's the Halos?" Because I was saying if I don't reply, it's because I'm playing Halo. And then I was like, I sent her a message back saying, "It feels like I'm home."
Did you feel like people did when the second teaser trailer of Star Wars Force Awakens came out and all you heard was, Chewie, we're home. You were like, I'm home.
Yeah, something like that. My favorite line in those trailers was the bit where the bit that got me to cry on the bus while I was watching the trailer the first time was when he was like, "It's true, all of it." And I don't know why that made me get emotional, but it's an apt comparison actually, The Force Awakens and Halo Infinite, because Halo Infinite feels kind of like The Force Awakens of the Halo series in a lot of ways.
Oh God, we know what happens next.
We get the best game in the entire franchise next.
That won't split the fan base at all. Wait, wasn't that? Haven't we already had that with Halo 5? But either way,
or 4.
And 4, yeah, which is objectively the best story.
Or is it?
I can't comment on it, so that's why I'm saying objectively. Until I play Halo Infinite over Christmas, I can't say anything about. But Amy, you've had your general thoughts. You really very, 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 very much like this game.
Oh, do you? Oh my God.
Where do you want to start first? I'm guessing it's from the order you've put in. So gameplay design.
Yeah, I changed the orders around on it a little bit because it's gonna makes more sense in my head to talk about it in this way.
You comfortable. That's how I go.
Because the thing about Halo, like all of them, is like the gameplay for me. I'm one of those people. Like I remember there was this op-ed a while ago by one of the news websites where there was someone talking about how the campaigns of Halo don't matter. Nobody cares about the story. And I was like on Twitter going, I care about the story. I like the story. Halo 4 was a good story.
I understand where that person comes from. If you just played, for me, 1, 2, and 3, because for me, there's still not really any story in 1, 2, and 3 for me personally.
There are bad aliens, and this big green dude has to shoot them and say loads of cool one-liners.
Yeah. It's 80s action nostalgia.
Yeah. I agree.
To awesomeness, there's no doubt about it. But they obviously they give you a story in 4, which both you and me loved. Yes. So, like,
we did.
Continue.
But yeah, so like, but for me, like the gameplay is like the thing that gets me, like Halo 2. Well, we were just talking about Halo 3 and Halo Reach are both like in my top 5 most played Xbox games ever. Because I like the gameplay and I like playing the game. So like, there's this thing when you talk about games, you know, like when people are talking about graphics for games, where they talk about like, oh, you know, like an older game looks better in your head than it actually does. Like you remember it looking better than it does. And
the nostalgia goggles.
So like my first instinct when I was playing Halo was, this is just classic Halo. But it's not just classic Halo, because if this played like Halo 1, it would feel pretty weird. Because Halo 1, while like revolutionizing first-person shooters on consoles 20 years ago, was 20 years ago. Halo Infinite feels like I remember Halo feeling, but with a lot of additions. There's like a grappling hook now and big open world. Not that big, but for Halo, it's a big open world. It's so every fight you get into in this game that isn't a boss fight, we'll talk about that later, is so incredibly satisfying. Like I loved picking fights with groups of enemies like across the map. Like you know when you play like Far Cry, whichever one you played, because they're all the same one. And like you just get sick of fighting guys and you just get in a car and you drive to the next place. In Halo, I'd be like, oh, there's some banished over there. I'm gonna go and fight them because it's fun. Like I enjoy fighting these people. And that's how it makes you feel. I'm losing my voice. This is fantastic. It's a good job we're not doing 4 of these.
And you've just started your review.
I know, and I've just started. No, like it's everything like sort of like that plays into like how good the fights feel. So the guns, like there's so many different weapons in this game. I don't want to say guns because you get like hammers and swords and stuff as well, but all the different weapons feel very unique from one another. Like in past Halo games, you'd have like say the battle rifle, right? And then, but you'd have like there'd be like different enemy factions who had a version of that weapon. This is the Covenant version of a battle rifle. This is the other version of I can't remember the names of the bad guys from Halo 4. And in this game, everyone just has different weapons, and they're cool, and they're so much fun to use. The enemy AI is awesome. Like it's so much fun to actually fight against them because they do things. They don't just stand in place and shoot or like hide behind cover and pop the head up just so you can shoot. Like they're actually trying to kill you, Moody. That's what I'm trying to say. I feel like in a lot of first person shooters, and this is going to sound weird, the enemy isn't trying to kill you. Sometimes is what it feels like. They're shooting bullets at you, but they're not actively trying to kill you. They're just trying to be in the way so you've got something to shoot. Whereas in Halo, I feel like, oh, those guys are trying to fucking kill me. They do not want me to see the next. They do not want me to see the next checkpoint.
No, you shall not pass.
You have to earn this. You have to earn every step. And like, I'm not saying it's like super difficult or anything. Like, I imagine if you crank the difficulty up, it is. But like, it's just you've got to like constantly like adapt to the environment. You've got to constantly adapt to the weapons that you have. You've got to constantly adapt to the enemies in front of you and the weapons that they have. Like, and like you can just figure out how to do all sorts of cool shit, like the grapple shot, which we'll talk about a lot in this review because like you get equipment in this game. There's like four different like equipments you get, and the grapple shot is fucking amazing. And you can use it in so many different ways, like to reposition yourself, to swing away from danger. Like you can upgrade it so that it's electrified, so that you can hit an enemy with it and it stuns them. Like you can use it to pick weapons up out of the environment. It's like your weapons are out. Oh shit, my weapon's out of ammo. There's one lying over there. You just go and you just grab it, and then you've got another gun. Like you can use it to pick up explosive barrels, right? Like
Yes.
they're always in every first-person shooter. You could use your grappler thing to just grab one, pick it up, and throw it.
Sounds good.
Fucking game changer right there. Absolute fucking carnage. But like
Interest?
it
Thank
it,
you.
it is hard to like to describe the feeling that you get when you're playing it. Like you're just constantly making lots of really small decisions as you're fighting through. Like there are some main campaign missions where it's just like long fights with like punctuated by breaks and stuff. Like there's a late game level which is which you in which you fight different sets of enemies that are constantly trying to kill you in this environment with weapons littered everywhere, and it's really really fun and satisfying to like adapt to the enemies that are coming from you, the direction that they're coming from. It's like, okay, where's like, oh, there's this gun here, or like I can swing up and get this sniper rifle in a tower and pick some up, and you know what I mean? And you're constantly making these really moment to moment decisions, and then you realize you've just spent like it doesn't feel like very long at all. You've just spent 30 minutes fighting all of these guys, and they're all dead, and you're kind of standing there just like, fucking hell, that was awesome. But like, it's the knowledge that if I took that fight again, like say I replayed the level or something, like it would it would go down completely differently. Like it's very dynamic like that. Because you are just literally improvising constantly. Which is what the Master Chief does in all the cutscenes. So like it makes you feel like the Master Chief, I guess.
Yeah, the game is very going from an experience from what I played, like with you and everything. Like you don't just stick with one weapon. You have to improvise all the time, changing it up all the time when it comes to your guns, and seeing what works for you. And yeah, that's really good that they're really adding that in, that they've kept that flow. Which I guess that's really
that's a good one. Yeah.
It makes what makes the Master Chief the ultimate warrior, I guess.
Yeah, like not like he like there's a cutscene right at the beginning of the game, where you get a character hands the Master Chief a pistol with one bullet in it, and the Master Chief's doing his thing. He's going to board an enemy ship, and the other character is saying like, you've only got a gun with the gun only has one bullet, and Master Chief just goes, it's enough. Which is a cool one-liner, but like that's also like the philosophy of the entire game, like it compressed, right? It's like you only have a gun with one bullet in it. Don't worry, it's enough. Like, but it's not just that the Master Chief is that character; it's that you feel like that when you play in the game. Like you can get into a fight and have like a shotgun with like two like say a shotgun with like one shell left in it, and your other weapon's completely depleted, and then there's a group of banished in the next room. You can still beat them. like it's enough. You just have to figure out how, and then execute on that as you're playing the game. And that is the crux of Halo, I think, since Halo 1. And it still feels satisfying 20 years later.
Well, that's great to hear. That's what I think. Well, I think that's what I think a lot of people have said when it comes to 343, that they haven't hit the soul, I guess you could say, when it comes to Halo in general. Obviously, they needed a massive amount of help when it came to its multiplayer for Guardians and for 4 and everything. But it's really good to hear, or like that, like going off from like what I've heard from people and everything like that. This is like Halo, what everyone was wanting it to do. And I won't lie, I've said it multiple times on like a broken record, but going off what everyone's saying, thank fudging God this didn't come out last year.
Oh my God.
I can only imagine how broken this game was.
It would have broken me if it had come out last year, but it came out this year and it's fan-fucking-tastic to play. Like, story aside, like story and characterizations aside, from Halo 4 anyway, not necessarily 5, like the 343 era Halo games haven't felt as good as the older ones to play, like from a gameplay perspective. But Halo Infinite might be the best one yet from that gameplay perspective. The grapple shot helps. Like, you instantly feel like, and I need to just sing the praises of the grapple shot for a minute. You get all the right upgrades, but who gives a shit? You get a grappling hook. It feels like it should always have been in Halo. You know when you play Resident Evil 3 and like it's got the quick turn, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you feel like that's always been in the series, but if you go back to the older games, no, it's not there. Like, that's what the grappling hook feels like. It feels like it was always a part of Halo, like, and it always should have been, but it's brand new for Halo Infinite. Like, it's so much fun to just swing around. Oh, it's just every game needs a grappling hook. I've decided that's it.
Isn't it kind of like the same as like when the last Doom came out? It's like everyone was like, "Oh my god, he has a sword now!" Why did he not already have a sword?
Why didn't he already have a sword? Yeah, it's like, why did Master Chief already have a grappling hook, man? What the hell?
Next they'll give him a spear or a sword and be like, "Why did he not already have these things?"
You can pick a sword up, can't you? Energy sword. You've got the energy sword, and when it runs out, you can still punch people.
It's like. And that's great to hear. Like, that's what everyone I think wants to hear. Like gameplay. Halo is gameplay.
Yeah.
At the core of it, Halo is its gameplay. And if the gameplay doesn't satisfy and it doesn't work, it's going to go downhill for a lot of people. And thankfully, going off what you're saying right now, and everyone else, gameplay it's where it needs to be, and that's fantastic to hear. Anything else you want to say about the gameplay design before you move on to the next stage?
No, I think we should move on to the next stage. Much like a Halo campaign, let's move on to the next stage.
World level design. So I want to say one thing before you get into your thing here. Should I be worried because it's open world and screams Far freaking Cry?
Okay.
Because when I saw that gameplay of them showing the world, I think I was thinking, oh my god, they've gone Far Cry. Oh my god, that's not what I want. Just give me a goddamn linear story with Master Chief doing Master Chief things. Do they give you that even though you got a Far Cry level?
So, number one, you can take that Far Cry comparison, throw it in the toilet. It's fine. We don't need that.
Throw it in the toilet. I don't have a toilet up here, but either way.
It's okay. Just like bounce it off some walls or something. We don't need the Far Cry comparison. This is not Halo Far Cry edition. So this was the part I was most worried about, because we had a conversation about this after the gameplay reveal, and even I was worried about it because I was like, I don't want an open world Halo. Like, I don't want a Far Cry I don't want a Halo that feels like Far Cry. I got bored of Far Cry fucking 4 games ago. No, I don't think you need to be worried. Before we get into the world and the level design, what I will say is, if you just want a linear Halo story, you can more or less get that. Like, you can just power through the main missions and play and have about 8 to 10 hours, I'd say, of a really good time. It's very much a case of, for the most part, you'll still have to traverse through the open world a little bit to get from point A to point B, but like in a sort of organic way that makes sense for what you're doing in the story. But like, you can basically just keep going and keep going and keep going. You're never gated from progress at all. Like, once you've done one mission, you can go to the next mission and the next mission. I think there's 15 campaign missions in total. Because what's happening in terms of the progression is there's 3 or 4. It's hard to remember. There's like 3 or 4 main areas. And you start off in one, and then you can just start doing the main missions. The main mission that's in that area. Or you could go off and you can do some of the other stuff, because there's bases to capture that act as fast travel points and also let you spawn in vehicles into the world, or like get weapons out of the weapons cases. There'll be Marines there who you can bring with you to like you can get one of those. There's a Warthog which seats like 5 people, and you can call in one of those Warthogs. It drops down, and then you could just get in and be like, "Come on, boys, we're going on a road trip," and take a bunch of Marines with you, and it's awesome. In terms of like the other activities that are in the game, there's a few strongholds which are all very different It's sort of like, hey, if there was a banished, if the banished controlled this ring, what kind of facilities would they have? Well, they'd have a prison, and they'd have a place where they could fuel all of their ships, and there'd be an armory, and there'd be like a gate blocking off these two parts of the world. And it's like, go fuck that shit up as the Master Chief, basically, like, because you're kind of fighting a war, like, essentially, in this game. So you can do those things. You can also just ignore those things. There's also Marine squads that you can rescue who are being held captive. There's high value targets, which are like mini bosses essentially in the world. Spartan cores, which like upgrade your equipment. Like I mentioned with the grapple shot earlier, there's like 5 different types of equipment you've got that you can upgrade. Do you need to be worried? No, you don't need to be worried, because you can ignore it if you want. However, and I think Halo Infinite has unlocked some knowledge in my brain, because I've been talking for the past couple years, I think, about open world fatigue. In terms of like, I'm fucking sick of most open world games. Like, a new open world game comes out and I get bored of the open world really, really easily. And then I either stop playing the game or I ignore the open world and focus on the story. But like with Halo Infinite, I clocked like 30 hours in the game. Like every time I opened up a new area to explore, like a new area opens up, it's like, now you could go to this tower and do the main mission, but there's these fobs, which are what they call the bases, and then there's all these other things you could do. And for me, doing that was basically me giving myself permission to play more of the game that I was enjoying. Like, it wasn't necessarily like, oh, I've got to do this to have a better time, to get the upgrades because I need the upgrades because the game's more difficult without it. It was literally just, there's more game here and I want to play it, so I'm going to go and do all this cool stuff. And because it's not part of the linear campaign and it's more open, you can be even more open to how you approach it. Like, there was a high value target nearby a base, and I just spawned in a fucking tank at my base, and I got in the tank, and the weapon, the AI that you have with you is called the weapon, and all of a sudden she just goes, "There's a high value target up here. You should approach with extreme caution." And in my head, as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, "Listen, I'm rolling up in a motherfucking tank. How much more cautious do you think I could possibly be?" And it gives you it's a great way to like you could just approach anything any way you want. Like when I finished the campaign, I had 2 high value targets left. And I just literally, I got in this, you get this flying vehicle called a Wasp. And I just got in that and I just flew to one, killed them, flew to the other one, killed them. I'm like, cool, I've got that achievement now. Like, that's it, I'm done. We can pack it up, guys. We're good. There's no more high value targets left.
Well, that's very good. Like I said, that was the one thing like about it. I'm just like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. So it's not forcing you into doing these things.
And they're not huge either. Like the world itself isn't overly big. Like, you're not going to be traveling too far to get anywhere.
Oh, that's good to hear. That's very good to hear. How the vehicles sound to feel to you?
I don't know what it is, but I just love driving that Warthog around. Like, and I'm so good at it. Like, I'm so bad at driving games, but like, you put me in a driver's seat of a Warthog in a Halo game, and I got this, man. Like, get in the back, shoot that fucking Gatling gun, and don't worry about a thing. But they're a lot of fun. So, like, as you complete some of the objectives, the things like capturing the bases, defeating the strongholds, rescuing Marines, you unlock what's called, you get Valor for that. It's like a separate XP system almost. And all that does is, it doesn't do very much. All it does is it lets you spawn in different vehicles and different weapons at forward operating bases. So like, you start off with the basics. Like, when you get to the first one, you can get an assault rifle and you can get a pistol at a forward operating base. But as you start getting more Valor, like, you can start getting sniper rifles and battle rifles and rocket launchers and the Commando, which is this awesome new gun that I really, really liked. liked using. Like you can just start and you'll start off and you can get a mongoose, which is the little bike thing, and then as you get more valor, you can start spawning in warthogs and different types of warthogs. The gun goose, which is a mongoose with rocket launcher on the front of it, which is very impractical but a lot of fun. And that's beyond just like jacking other people's rides, right? Like especially with the new Grapple Shot, where it's like there's someone like there's a mission that starts off and a banshee's coming at you and it's shooting at me, and I just grappled it just to see what would happen, and you hit it, and then you get up, and then you just eject the pilot and take the banshee and fly away. And you can do that with all sorts of vehicles. So you grapple to them and you can just steal them.
Well, that's good. It's like, that's very intuitive and very inventive. That I won't
Yeah.
lie. So it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
very good thing.
Yeah, like just exploration can just be fun in its own right, because they've given you this grappling hook so you can use it to get around, and they've turned off fall damage, so you don't have to worry about exploring. Like if you fling yourself off the edge of the world, you'll die. But apart from that, like you can fall off a mountain and be fine, which makes a lot of sense. Like I don't know why Halo's ever had fall damage before.
Big ass suit, you would think it would protect them better.
In Halo 3, Master Chief jumped out of a fucking spaceship and landed on Earth, and he was fine. What happens if why if I fall off this tiny building, do I die?
Okay, time to move on to the sound/music design. So how does that feel for you? Or sound to you, should I
So
say?
how does it sound? Well, it makes me feel things. So I'll start. I'll start with the music. It's great, but it never felt amazing. You know what I mean? Like it's great music, and there are a couple of points. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing there. There's a couple of points where the music really stands out, sort of the quieter, more somber moments, and then obviously there's any time that the Halo theme itself kicks in when something awesome is happening. That still slaps. But for the most part, like the soundtrack's kind of forgettable, but not in a bad way. Just in a like, I'm sure if I had footage of myself playing the game, right, and I watched it back, and I was like, oh, that song was really good, but like I don't remember what it was. I just remember it as part of like the whole of like fighting this boss, or fighting in this stronghold or something. But yeah, and then all of a sudden it'll be like, hey, here comes the theme tune. Something cool's about to happen.
So what would you say? It's like it ain't broke, don't fix it type of scenario.
Kinda, yeah. It's a very good soundtrack, but like, would I list it as one of my favorite soundtracks of the year? No, probably not. Like, am I gonna go off and listen to it on Spotify? Yeah, probably will, but like, and maybe I just wasn't paying attention because I was having too much fun grappling everything, but for like, as somebody finished the game last night, like that's where I think that's where I'm at with the music. The sound design itself, like the sound effects, sound design is really very good, but like the sound design team at 343 have done great work for the past few games, right? So it's like I'm not surprised. So it's awesome, but because I'm not surprised by it, it's like I'm not going to be like talking about it for the next 15 minutes. It's very, very good. The guns sound good. The vehicles sound good. The general sound effects and ambience sounds awesome.
Yeah. Well, that sounds really kind of like that's what you want to hear. It does everything. Going off what you say, it does everything what it says. It says on the tin, basically, when it comes to sound and music design. Which
pretty much. Yeah,
obviously is what you want to hear. So now to the juicy part. The main element for me, I think, for any game, for me most of all, is the stories, the story and the characters / voice acting part of it. Yeah. Amy, like we've already stated many times, and stated in this episode ourselves, we were a huge fan of Halo 4's story. Even though we didn't play Halo 5 together during our playthrough, we both know the story of Halo 5 and everything. Everything goes into a direction. It goes into a direction that did not best please a lot of fans of Halo. I'm very nonchalant when it comes to it because I'm not the biggest Halo fan. I've said that many occasions, but I do appreciate a good story, but I also... because I see where people go, no, that's not a good story type of thing. How is the story for Halo Infinite.
So, it's a little bit complicated, as you probably can imagine. Infinite's got a lot going on, right? Not in terms of the game, I mean, just in terms of like the real world situation that it finds itself in, where it needs to be accessible for new players, whilst also like being an experience that people who have played since day one, like myself, really want to get into. And I can't speak for that former group because I'm not part of that. I am a Halo fan, and I have been for 2 decades. How you feel about the narrative of the game? It's going to depend on what you're focusing on. As you're playing, as you're experiencing the narrative itself, because the plot is, hey, the Master Chief is fighting the Banished, and they're on this new mysterious Halo ring, and some stuff happens, and I don't want to do spoilers, so I won't say what that stuff is, and it's fine. Like in terms of like the Master Chief fighting the baddies, that story, that part of the story, the plot, you might say, it's okay. It gets you where you need to go, right? Like Master Chief, you need to have a forward motion in a video game. You do that with a plot. The plot's fine. But around that, you've got these three main characters: the Master Chief, the weapon, and the pilot. You don't find out the pilot's name until the very end, so I'm not going to spoil anything. So these three characters go on a journey together, right? And the game itself starts in Madeira. So a lot of stuff went down at the end of Halo 5. It's been a significant amount of time since the end of that game in the story. And as the game starts, the ship that Master Chief is on, the Infinity, is being attacked by the Banished. Master Chief gets the shit kicked out of him by Atriox. Atriox throws him out of the fucking airlock and beats him. Right? The Infinity loses, the Master Chief loses. That's where the story starts. You ain't got a fucking clue who he is, why they're fighting, what's going on, why they're at this ring, like anything. And at first I was really worried because I was like, oh no, has 343 done it again, where it's like, to understand what's going on, you need to have read novels or something. No, it turns out they just started their story in a specific place. Everything makes sense by the end. Like, and it tells a really good story. And honestly, it smartly skips a lot of stuff. Like, if they try to continue directly from the end of Halo 5 and told the story, the part of the story leading up to the part where Atriox chucks Master Chief out of an airlock, I don't think that would have been as good a game. Like, I think they've made a really smart decision starting it where they started it, and that becomes part of the backstory of Halo Infinite that they fill in as time goes on. Like, what happened to Cortana and all of the stuff she was doing at the end of Halo 5. Like, why does the weapon even exist? Like, what's going on this ring? What's so special about it? Why has it got a big fucking chunk missing out of it? Like, it's been blown up. Like, these are all questions you'll be asking yourself in the first sort of 20, 30 minutes of the game. They all get answered. For me, I really, really enjoyed the story of the game because of the three main characters and the bond that they create between them as the game goes on. There are actual emotional moments in the game, right? Like the things that we praised Halo 4 for that didn't really exist in the first three games. Like the Master Chief has characterization, and it's characterization that has been built upon many, many games of traumatic events that have happened to him, especially in the last one, and especially between the two games. Like the weapon is one of my new favorite Halo characters. Like, she's brilliant in a way that I can't describe. She's so, like, there's the thing going around Twitter where it's like, we must protect like the weapon, the new character, the new AI character, the weapon. She's so cool, and I love her so much. And every interaction she has with the Master Chief and the pilot is precious and fantastic. And the pilot is actually a really cool character who goes through some shit, and you'll be fighting these enemies, and you have these big bombastic explosive moments, and you'll have your Master Chief one-liners, and there'll be explosions, and you'll shoot some guys, and then like the game will just take a moment to have a cutscene where like characters actually interact with each other like they're people, which sounds basic, but I mean, we know the history of the Halo franchise, right? Like,
they don't do that.
They don't always
Yeah.
they don't always do that. Like, it doesn't go far enough in certain aspects of the story for me personally. Like, there's this whole thing about the Master Chief being the hope, right? Because the UNSC lost. They lost the fight at the very beginning of the game, and it's been 6 months. Master Chief was floating in space for 6 months before the pilot finds him in that cutscene that they showed off at E3 last year, I think it was. And like in those 6 months, like obviously they're on this ring and they're trying to survive, and the Master Chief represents that hope, right? He's back. He's going to come and try and help, right? And it doesn't really lean into that as much as I would have liked, but for what we get, yeah, I dig it. I dig it a lot. Like I say, like it has these really good character moments throughout that I am here for. I want more. I said after Halo 4 movie, I wanted more of that, and I get more of that. I get more of that.
So you can judge this question however you want if you want to answer this. Do they basically retcon 5?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, okay.
The stuff that happened in 5 happened.
Mm-hmm.
The story picks up much later, than the ending. So, if you imagine a theoretical Halo 6 that is a sequel to what happened in Halo 5, that game's not going to exist. It's already happened. It forms the basis of the backstory of Halo Infinite. And you learn it as you go, and you learn that backstory as you progress through the game. It's an integral part of the story of the Master Chief and other characters.
Very good. That's what we want to hear. So
yeah,
because I was very curious because I know the backlash for 5 and everything when it came to its characters and everything. I was wondering,
well,
will they kind of retcon it in some sort of way or something?
Well, Halo 5 was an interesting one where the story was subpar and didn't really work on a lot of levels, but the ending of that game was actually really promising in what it could potentially set up for the future. Now they didn't follow through on that quite directly, but what it ended up becoming in Halo Infinite works really well.
I won't lie that because okay, I'm not gonna go further on that because I think it will go into spoiler territory.
Yeah, I'd have to spoil the game to explain.
I will ask that off thing.
Good call.
Because if I can go any further, I will spoil it.
But someone's going to spoil something.
Yeah.
Just very quickly as well, what I will say is the ending is probably going to be divisive in terms of how it leaves the game, how it leaves the story off, right? Like where it ends as opposed to like what happens specifically. But
where do you land with it?
For me, it was a very good emotional payoff for this game and previous games. And because of the way Halo Infinite is going to work, I have questions about what's going to happen next in terms of how the story continues. Like questions for 343, not the actual narrative itself. Like, how does the story continue? But it lays the groundwork for the future quite well, whilst wrapping up. It doesn't wrap up. See, you go back to the plot, right? Of like what I was talking about, Master Chief fighting bad guys and stuff, and it doesn't necessarily wrap that up. But that's because Halo Infinite is a platform for the next 10 years of Halo. But in terms of like the story, the 3 characters, the bond, the other stuff that I'm talking about, it wraps that up really well, I think. So it depends what you're there for. And I was there for the characters and getting some resolutions to some long running plot threads.
Very good. That's what we want to hear. That's what I would want to hear anyway. So time to move on to what, as always, there's no perfect game. There's always something wrong with said game. Going off what you have written, Amy, it's pretty much what everyone else is saying I'm hearing at the same time. But go. So, tell us what didn't work in Halo Infinite.
What didn't work for me in Halo Infinite, what didn't work for it as Amy just quickly wipes down the energy drink off of her laptop. That she definitely didn't mildly spill, very slightly. I got a bit excited talking about Halo. The antagonists, and that's from several different vantage points, because number one, I don't think the antagonists work for the story at all. I think they could have. There's sort of 3 main antagonists, There's the Harbinger, there's the Blade Master, and there's the Brute guy who's in charge of the Banished. And the fact that I can't remember his name probably says something. It begins with an E. It's not Atriox. It's another guy. He's like cool conversations with him and stuff, but like by the time his part of the story is over, it's like I remember very little about what we actually talked about. Like they just didn't really feel all that consequential of the story, right? Like, and I feel like that's the part of the game where it's like it suffers a bit because it's clearly setting up the groundwork for the future of the story from here on out. And I feel like you get the three protagonists have awesome chemistry, awesome lines, like they have awesome scenes together. But when it comes to the antagonists, to the three main bad guys, it's like I don't know, you weren't really developed very well, you weren't really fleshed out. Like we had some cool cutscenes, but then it's just like kind of fizzles out for me with the three antagonists, especially the Blade Master. The Blade Master gets a really cool introduction, and you think, fuck yeah, when this guy like comes into the story and him and Master Chief are going to go toe to toe, it's going to be fucking awesome. And then it's just not. It barely registers that anything happens. He's called the Blade Master, for fuck's sake. And then you do a boss fight, and I think part of the problem is the boss fights are pretty not great. Like, there's a bunch of them in this game. Fighting bullet spongy enemies is not what Halo is. Not something that feels good while you're playing Halo.
That's the sad thing, though, when it comes to boss fights. When I see in a first-person shooter game in general, it just becomes a bullet sponge until they finally drop.
Yeah.
And that's and I don't see. I've never seen any first-person shooter do it inventive. For me personally,
Yeah.
If there's a game out there, everybody, please shout it in the comments. Let us know. Because we'll obviously always give it a try because we've got nothing to do for 2 weeks.
And we're probably forgetting one. So, like, who knows? But
and there's that as well, yeah.
Like, there's a level that sums this up called, it's a later game level. I'll name it so people who are watching this who have played the game know what I'm talking about. It's called House of Reckoning. And, like, that level is some fantastic, like, end to end, the combat in that level feels so good all the way through. And then there's a boss fight at the end of the House of Reckoning. And like everything leading up to it feels impeccable, and then the boss fight's just like really boring and kind of frustrating. And then you get past it, and it's like, oh, that left a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth because of how good everything leading up to that was. Like the best boss fight in this game is a one where you fighting the boss, and then they spawn a wave of different enemies, and you fight them, and that part feels great. And then you've got to fight the boss, and it feels a bit shit. And then there's like it does that for a few phases, and every time it's telling that every time that the enemies are spawned in, it's like, yeah, this is a fucking great boss fight. Whoa, yeah, get it, do it. Oh, now I've got to fight the boss. Pop, 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 pop. Oh, here come the bad guys again. Now I'm gonna fight the bad guys. Yeah, this is awesome. I go grapple hook, boom, 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 drop wall, grenade. Like, and then it's just like, oh man, now I got to go back to fighting this one enemy with a stupidly high health bar.
Yep.
Boo.
Sounds about right. It does, yeah. That's disappointing, obviously, but it's what if. Even though they showed the villains and everything, that they were never. The trailers came across very quote unquote nothing wrong with it because I love that franchise in general. MCU-ish, that focus, main character, hero, Master Chief, not villain. Villain there. Could do stuff, but not that
wrong.
worrisome. That's
wrong,
what it seems like. But I'm not gonna lie, it kind of going off what I remember. That's basically a Halo game in general when it comes to its villains. They all seem very knout by the end because it's all about the main big green dude, Master Chief.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Halo 4 was the first Halo I think that really had a strong antagonistic presence from the get-go, right? Like a lot of the time, like especially Halo 1, for example, like the Guilty Spark was a bit of an antagonist by the end of the game. But like the villains of Halo 1 were the Covenant and the Flood. Like, it wasn't necessarily one character in those. It's this army you've got to fight, right? Like that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, so I'm so happy you've enjoyed this game. You were, I'm not sure if you were worried about it or anything when it was coming into everything, because obviously when this was meant to come out last year, everybody. It was meant to be the big launch for the Xbox Series X and S. Thank God it didn't come out last year. And we've said many times, like, yo, delay the game as long as you want.
Yep.
A delayed game is going to become better.
Yeah, well, I'm sitting here now talking this game, singing this game's praises, and I think if it had come out with the Xbox last year, I would have been like, oh, we got some problems here, Moody.
On top of Cyberpunk last year, woo! Oh, that would have been a bloodbath for video game news last year. I may have said, yeah, Amy, I'm out.
I'm
That
done.
was before all the craziness that happened this year. Yeah, but anything else you want to shout out? Because you've been very quiet on the big old multiplayer.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like this is a campaign review, right? Like, the multiplayer is, if you go back in this video and you listen to me talk about the gameplay and how this might be my favorite Halo in the entire series as far as gameplay goes, I think you're going to get a handle of what I think of the multiplayer, which is, like, I have so much fun with this, like, in terms of this multiplayer. Like, the multiplayer is a weird one because the game feels incredible to play moment to moment, right? So the multiplayer naturally feels incredible to play moment to moment. And like, even just going from launch to this week, right? Like, the multiplayer's already been improved because they've added the playlist that everybody's been asking for, which is, we need Slayer. Like, we need a playlist designed just for people who want to shoot people and not do Capture the Flag and Oddball and all the other stuff. So like, if you ask me in 6 months to a year, like, Halo Infinite's multiplayer is going to be different, hopefully improved every time you ask me. Like, but right now, like, I can say the gameplay is amazing, so I'm really digging the multiplayer. The only thing I hate about the multiplayer is I don't always have a grappling hook. Because having played the campaign, now I feel like that's an essential part of the Halo experience.
I think that would break the multiplayer.
You can get it, so it's a pickup in the world, so you can pick it up and find it, but like, you don't always have it. Like, could you imagine if
why they done it? I think everyone had it.
Oh,
they
yeah.
would have broken it. They would have tested that and went, it's breaking
whoa,
it.
this is
Get it
wild.
out.
Like, there'll be a
Yeah.
playlist later down the line where it's just like everyone has a grappling hook, and it'll be a separate playlist that you can play if you want. It's very strange to like play the multiplayer beta, pick the grappling hook up like once, and I was like, hey, this is kind of fun, but like, never used it. Just had a great time with it. Sunk like 20-30 hours into the campaign and went, how did I play Halo without a grappling hook this entire time? Get back into the multiplayer and be like, oh, I don't have one now.
You're like Gandalf. I have no memory.
I have no
place without a grappling
hook. Like, why can't I grapple that thing and just swing around? And it's just like, oh man, like, there's a guy coming towards me. It's fine. I'll grapple hook him out of his Jeep. I don't have one. Shit. This button does nothing. And lastly, just as a quick sort of anything else I want to shout out. Obviously, this is a review of Halo Infinite as it stands now. I am now at a point where it's like, I'm still basking in the afterglow of how much I enjoy the campaign. But like, in a few weeks' time, I'll be like, I need to know, guys, 343, I'm talking to you. Where are we going from here? Because there's clearly more story. How are we doing this? I need to know how we're doing this.
That was what I was going to ask you next. What do you think is the future of Halo? Because this is not just, this is a continuation. This is a whole thing they intend to update with whatever they want to do, story-wise, multiplayer-wise, for the next, for whatever it is, for the future. It's Halo Infinite. I think they're not going to intend to create another Halo game anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a long time before a Halo game isn't set on this Halo ring. From a story standpoint as well as from a game design standpoint, right? And what I'm hoping for is 1 or 2 years down the line, we get like a sequel-sized game, because one of the advantages of if they are going to build on top of Halo Infinite with quote unquote sequels for the game is they don't need to build an entirely new game with entirely new mechanics and an entirely new world. Like, everything's in there now. Like, the baseline, right? The foundation, it's all in there. And they can just build the next part of the story, the sequel to Halo Infinite, into Halo Infinite. Add a new area, add 2 new areas, like go underground, like maybe there's a fucking sky castle that nobody knows, it's whatever it is. Like, so my worry is that it's gonna be like Destiny, where you get like you get a big expansion with a bunch of missions, and they're like, but the story continues in this tiny little seasonal update where you get like 2 missions, and it's like, no, I don't want that. Like, like what I hope is that we, like, even if it takes a while, that we get like another campaign the size of Halo Infinite in the next one. So like the story continues forward in like big meaty chunks, not in like tiny little slivers of content.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. Like, I hope so for everybody who's a big Halo fan and everything. So, final thoughts, Amy.
They nailed it, like, and I'm so happy that they did. Like, I did have worries and concerns going into this game about an open world Halo, because you know how I feel about open world games at the moment. Like, I don't like many of them. Like, I get really bored with all the open world shenanigans. But Halo Infinite is one of my favorite games of the year. Like, and it plays so well that it's like Spider-Man back in 2018, where it's like I got sick of fucking shit. Like, I'd collect the pigeons and do these tasks and stuff, but I was still doing it because it meant I could play more Spider-Man. And in Halo Infinite, I had the same experience where it was like, you know what? Like, I've rescued 15 Marine squads and I'm not bored because it means I get to play more Halo Infinite. You know what I mean? Like, so like, just loved it. Enjoyed the story for what it was. I'm not really thinking about the future right now. I'm just kind of taking Halo Infinite as it is, as opposed to worrying about what it might be in the future.
Fantastic. Well, that is it for Amy's review of Halo Infinite. But I have a question for you, audience. The question is, sprint button or non-sprint button? Let us know in the comments down below, because it's time for us to get out of here. Do you agree with Amy, or are you in the middle, or just did not work for you? Let us know again in the comments down below, because it's time for us to get out of here and go and play some more video games so Amy can eventually review them, because I'm too lazy. Say bye, Amy.
You click the left stick in and you can infinite run. Are you happy now?